And we're on the thing now. On air. Oh, I should start that, yeah, music thing. Um, so yeah, we have the speed drawing playing. As the audience comes in, Kevin, which I'm going to be sharing the link, double checking that it's set to public. Good.
Hmm.
Um, then you should probably talk about who you are for like future listening audiences. You know, you co-hosting this episode.
Yeah. Do you
I don't have
do you
like
know
an
what?
intro prepared. I did
No, but
mention.
like how? Do you know how much people usually introduce themselves? Like,
Oh, I mean, it's pretty informal. It's as informal as this conversation is. So, like, this is how professional we are here. Um,
yeah,
so like, I don't know. You and I went to high school together.
yeah.
And you carried me on your back uh, through the last 3 years of school, which, you know, pretty cool. Uh, um, you can say whatever you want about yourself.
Mostly I was asking like, are you? Is this first name basis or screen names?
Oh yeah, like first names. I was gonna call you
Okay,
Kevin,
okay.
especially because like I think people can figure out based on your username that your name might be Kevin.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah. Yeah, people have been calling each other by their first names. We've had Greg, Quinn, Victoria, and David on here so far, so you are the fifth co-host, I think.
Cool.
Um,
Oh dang, is this speed draw? Was that Vic?
yeah. That's Victoria's speed draw of the 4.1 chapter art. So they're at the market, and it's the stall that Regent is returning from. Okay.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Oh, and let's see here. Um, yeah, and we can talk about the art as it happens, but I do want to go over. So I want to give people a little more time to file in before I do the audience participation reminder. But hey, Greg. Um, uh, yeah, I kind of did a multi-question week. We only have like one person who hasn't read the book, which is M. So it's a bit unfortunate that we won't get an answer to the for anyone who hasn't read the book. How do you think Taylor got her powers? Question,
Hmm.
but maybe in the future, if someone somehow does this as a listen along to reading it, which would be what a weird idea. Then they could tell us what they think. I don't know. I think it would be like a really hard question to answer. How like I don't think I had any conception before I was told like what happens. So,
Yeah. I think when I was reading through the first time, I would assume that it had something. I assumed it was her mom.
hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good thought. Like that's literally what Miss Militia thinks later.
Yeah.
Um but anyway, I don't know if anyone else is coming in, so we'll just go ahead and we'll do the audience participation reminder. What do you think about Taylor and Lisa's dynamic at this point? Which we'll ask partway through the episode rather than at the end. And then also, what do you think about Taylor's refusal to use her powers on her bullies? Um, so think about those for when we answer later. And then, Kevin, do you want to start off with the bullying theme a little bit? Talk about this.
Sure. Yeah, so one of the themes that we wanted to cover today for these chapters is bullying. I think in the context of the story so far, a lot of it is how Taylor's brief time as a cape has changed how she deals with it. We've seen right away, uh, a change in her relationship to Emma just since the story has started, kind of part of the her growth and expansion as she's been doing some of the cape stuff, is she's now able to stand up to Emma verbally. She's showing this kind of growing confidence that she can't hold back. Like, even though previously in the story, her tactic of dealing with the bullying or just problems in general was silence, she's starting to stand up for herself here.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I definitely agree with that, and like it had been the only thing she could think to do before to just like not talk, and um we saw her getting like more directly bullied and just nothing, although that was very like impressive stoicism in the moment as well, in my opinion.
Yeah,
But
it's like a
Taylor does a
it's like
lot
a
of
point
things.
she got to, right?
Hmm.
Sorry for
Oh,
interrupting,
no, no, yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, she's kind of like concluded for herself that just the complete silence and lack of reaction is the best thing that she can do, and that's starting to change again.
Yeah. um And then I think I'm gonna jump on to. Well, actually, no. I should say I thought about the bullying. Um, uh, it feels like Taylor also. I thought of this is getting a lot more confidence just directly by having like more contact with other people.
Mm,
Just regular interactions that aren't strictly negative.
right.
So. And that kind of moves us along to the next theme of that Victoria had wanted me to talk about, which is female friendship. And just the way it's portrayed here is kind of different than the rest of. Oh, Vic just got in the chat. I hope you guys like the Cape Cap stand. I did, actually. I really like how one of them says Triumph and the other two have a Triumph logo. And then there's your Arms Master on the front. Couldn't quite tell what the others are, but yes. And quality art again. Like now that we can see all the colors and things, now that the speed draw is done, like I really like how that stand looks. But I mean,
I
what it?
just want to second that. It looks
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Cool, cool. Um, but yeah, so the female friendships in this the way that Taylor and Lisa interact is like pretty different from the way we see them interact throughout a lot of the book. I feel like it's um, just not a setting that they're in very much because of how much cape stuff there is. I guess there's not that much downtime where they're like civilians, I guess. So.
Yeah, I
uh,
guess to follow up, I feel like a lot of the times when Taylor is in fight situations, like in the bank fight, she goes into a very like I will solve this fight mode, and you don't see a lot of her personality like you would see here.
Right, right, yeah, yeah. She definitely has like really compartmentalized thinking. Um, and that's something you can see when you contrast those type like what you were saying with like this and just generally like whenever there's action going on, she just immediately gets in that mindset to fight and to just always find a way to win. So 2 + 4 × 5 is here, except driving, so is only listening. Cool, cool. Lurking is appreciated as well. So even if somebody doesn't feel up for commenting, it's totally fine. Um, but yeah. Do you have any other like thoughts on their female friendship before we move on, or do you want to hop into the
Um,
chapter?
just a brief one in that I think we've seen a little bit of. I think at this point, Taylor's shown the most friendliness to Brian and Lisa, and there's a pretty big difference between her relationship with Lisa and her relationship with Brian. Of course, they haven't known each other for too long at this point, and some of it is like Lisa's power, but I feel like they talk about a lot more personal things more quickly here in these
Yeah,
chapters.
I agree. I feel like she is more open as like a peer because she has this like romantic attraction to Brian that's
Hmm.
like blocking her from having like a more normal relationship, like a friendship that way. And I think it's both like a in this case female friendships thing, but like a romantic versus platonic thing, um,
Hmm.
specifically. Because I think that she would want to be open like this with Brian, but ironically, because of her attraction to him, it's like too probably nerve
Yeah.
wracking to do that consistently. Vale says, I can almost hear Taylor soaking up the friendship vibes in this chapter, like a desert if you pour water on the ground.
Right.
Yeah. Oh my god.
She's like so horribly deprived of it for so long that, yeah.
Yeah. It's just a sweet and nice chapter, they say. All right, I think we'll hop in. Do you want to start us off, or do you want me to?
Um, Go ahead.
Okay. So it's Friday again. Finally. That's right, everyone. We've reached the 1 week mark in the story time. So, it is Friday morning. Well, no, Friday afternoon, because she's in her math class at the end of the day. Um, but the juice thing, the lung fight, meeting the Undersiders, planning and executing the bank robbery, all in a week. Um, uh,
It's pretty wild to me, like how quickly that's all gone by.
oh yeah,
I don't, I can't even remember what happened this Monday, but yeah.
yeah.
But I think
Mhm.
something interesting is like it's been a week, and I really think in the bank fight that Taylor has already shown she's really good at this.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think she got kind of chumped in a way against Lung, but then in like a normal fight setting where she's not under so much danger, she's like so effective. It's bonkers. So
Yeah.
yeah, she's awesome. That's why she's my third favorite. Tattletale's my second favorite. Don't worry. Um, so then Emma says, "You actually showed up." She notices that Taylor's in class for the first time since last Thursday. Yeah, yeah, since last Thursday. So she's missed an entire week of the math classes, um, including last Friday, I guess. Taylor's gone to school once per arc so far, and it's Friday, so Taylor just has to make it through today, and it's the weekend. She's on to something with this whole 1 day school week thing, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, it seems very good. Although I guess her reasons for doing it aren't too great.
The reasons aren't too great, but I mean, yeah, 1 day and then the weekend. Oh, man. Nailing it. Anyway.
Yeah. So, like, once she's at school, obviously she runs into Emma because things can't be nice. But I think it's interesting that like even after the week of crazy Cape stuff, like Taylor is still hyper observant about what Emma's doing. So she notices her style. I think there's a note in the chapter where Taylor sums up how like commenting on Emma's dress, her hair, how she's able to basically like completely bypass social norms and just pull things off.
Yeah, I've got that here
Um,
if you want me to read the little bit.
yeah, go ahead.
So, it was she was wearing an expensive dress that had probably been a gift to her after one of her modeling contracts, and her red hair was up in the kind of complex knot that looked completely ridiculous on 95% of the girls that tried to pull it off. She could make it work, though. Emma was one of those people who just seemed to ignore the social awkwardness and minor issues that plagued everyone else. She didn't get zits. Any style she wore her hair or clothes in looked good on her, and she could break pretty much any social code of high school and walk away unscathed. Yeah, I had that for the fashion zone. Previous. Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure how exactly to read into it here, but I always interpreted Taylor being like upset or noticing this less as her like I don't think she really feels jealous of Emma. as
Mm-hmm.
much as like she's just upset at how unfair things are for her.
Yeah, that Emma sucks so much personality wise, and yet still is able to have this like um uh all these boons, as they say. This perfect by the way that Taylor wants to look, because she does want to look like this Emma type. It seems like, based on kind of the way she thinks about stuff. Like, so Emma gets to look how Taylor wants to look, even though she's so awful to Taylor, kind of thing. Yeah.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, go for the
Emma's the
line.
worst.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say.
I but, like Taylor's comment, just God, I hated her. So I've been pretty I've been binging through both Worm and the sequel Ward pretty consistently over the last year. I have to say, even after like reading all of that, Emma is still one of the most unlikable characters for me. And just like going back and hearing about the shit that she puts Taylor through just makes me really, really upset. So
Yeah.
she's the worst.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna check the chat. Vale says, if this was a movie storyboard, day one made friends, day two robbed bank, terrorized crowd, day three shopping montage. And then Greg says, this was a semester in, or there was a semester in college where I managed to cram 18 credit hours into classes just on Tuesday and Thursday. It was pretty excellent. I'm sure that's in response to the 1 day school week. Oh
Yeah.
boy. Um, yeah, I'll just jump up to here. So,
Okay.
Taylor gives up on trying to finish her homework with the study time they have, and is just standing up for herself instead, which is probably a better use of her time. Um, they go back and forth a bit over it, and then the great line from Taylor, "I bother you? Wow." Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that one.
Taylor's honestly like pretty savage to her in this exchange here. Like she's got legitimately good comebacks. Like the
Yeah,
kind of thing that if I was still in school and I was hearing this going on, I'd be cheering her on.
yeah. And then
Yeah, I think Emma says to her like she's trying to like get under Taylor's skin. She's like, "Oh, I wasted so much time being your friend." But yeah, Taylor's having none of it. I think she says back like, "Oh, you're as mature as you were when we were 13." And the dialogue kind of just keeps going. But I think it's just really interesting like how different Taylor is handling the situation versus all the previous times.
oh, for sure, sure. Um, we had here that she gets some pretty good quips in, and it's probably like really shocking to Emma because their last interaction was Taylor in the hallway when she made Taylor cry. Um, and yeah, Taylor's relieved to have known the problem like of Emma hassling her now is like dealt with, because it's like the longer Emma goes without harassing her, the worse it's going to be. And she has this really predictable pattern of waiting and not doing anything in the lead up to a new form of like pranks, let's say, big air quotes around pranks. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty bad when nothing's happening.
I just wanted to
Um,
add to that. It's just like
mhm.
such a horrible bullying situation to be in, where it's like the old physical bullying, where the you're so used to getting beat down, it's like the anticipation becomes worse than the thing happening. It just
Right.
like bleeds into all of her life.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And like it seems like the best part of her life was like her home life, and like what did she do there? Kind of be sad and watch TV.
Yeah.
So not ideal. Um
Nope.
And then let's see here. Emma tries to verbally wound Taylor by insulting her life and saying she has no friends. Um, it's also pretty savage, but I mean, like, from a really mean place.
Yeah. But I
Then,
think like
mhm.
one of the big differences in this chapter is like, especially with what comes after this for the chapters we just listened to, is like Taylor really does have friends now, even if she hasn't completely realized it yet. So she's able to come at it from a different place, I think.
Yeah, that's true too. She doesn't even. I don't think she thinks of that in this moment specifically. She thinks of the
Mm.
money she has, which
Yeah.
she's like comparing in a, I guess in kind of a shallow way, but because it's directly something Emma brings up about her not having a job. Um, I don't know. I think that she kind of like sideways thinks about that.
Hmm.
Looks like 2 plus 4 times 5 has hit 5 out of 5 possible red lights. So that's some luck right there. This happens to me all the time because my favorite streams happen uh, at the end section of when I'm at work. So I'm driving from there to my destination, and what a disaster. Um, but yeah, Taylor full on laughs in Emma's face, and then she soothes her emotions by mentally comparing the money she stole to Emma's modeling money and how like much more she made in a day. So it's pretty good. Do you wanna read this?
Yeah. So Taylor gets a very good fuck you, Emma, and just straight up tells her to her face, get a clue before you try to insult people, which is very long overdue.
Yeah, yeah. I try and pull the really fun quotes out like that. Finally at work. Um. Oh, bye. Catching the rest of the stream later. Um. Let's see here. Taylor capitalizes on the moment that she gave herself to bail before Emma says anything back.
Yeah. I mean, immediately after she starts worrying again that, this is probably just going to motivate Emma to get creative and do something more horrible.
Yeah. Um, she's like not worried about the teacher coming back and doesn't think he's going to come back either. I think this is a funny like they have all these little world building and character moments I think that are great, but this is another one. Other students theorize that Quinlan has Alzheimer's or is a cape, but Taylor has a mundane explanation that makes sense to her. She thinks Quinlan has a substance abuse issue. Um, and so she just thinks she thinks he's an alcoholic and that he leaves the class and gets drunk. So yeah, very sad. Normal problems are in this world too. Um, but Taylor feels good despite any guilt that she feels when she thinks too hard about the hostages, which is a bit odd.
Yeah, she I feel like at this point she's still like, oh, I'm just doing this to gather information and I'm like heroic and noble at heart, but she seems to be very down with some of the more villainous stuff already, so well, might be early to say.
Yeah, I mean, well, what she did to Clock Blocker. Could I really
Well,
be blamed if I went on my way not to dwell on it? She should be thinking of that. It's nightmarish. Anyway,
yeah. Oh boy, here I go shoving bugs down holes again.
yeah, it's like what she do. Um, what's weird too though is she is not even that aggressive. I don't think in some of the fights where, in my opinion, the person not that they're terrible, but they deserve it more than Dennis.
I think, like, for real though, she's just very practical about it, right? Like, the whole time it's happening, she's not like, oh god, I'm doing a bad thing. She's like, oh, Clock Blocker's power doesn't interact with this very well, so this is an effective way to keep him out of the fight.
Yeah, it's It's very like inhuman of her in a way, but what are you gonna do? That's our Taylor.
Yep.
Let's see here. Oh, do you wanna start off here and moving down?
Yeah. So yeah, so after the bank robbery, Taylor comments that she slept well. I think in the chapter she talks about how it was because she was exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or that's her interpretation. But yeah, on her morning run, she meets up with Brian, and she's like pretty happy about that interaction. They had muffins on the beach while they were looking through the headlines of papers. Um, just
I
yeah,
think
she's
you know what
Mhm.
I just thought of this for the first time. I think she probably had like a huge adrenaline rush and then like gigantic like just like normal neuro stuff like dopamine and stuff from the excitement of winning and all that. So she was
Yeah,
probably had good sleep because she finally had like a chemically balanced brain to some degree.
yeah. She had Lisa like thrown into her, right? Like Glory Girl.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. She had injuries, but um I
I mean,
just
injuries don't seem to bother Taylor too much.
yeah,
Maybe
she's
skipping
she's
ahead.
pretty tough. She there's more of a reason for it post this arc. But yeah,
Hmm.
she's able to tank hits, I think because she can center herself in her bugs and like disconnect from her body.
Hmm.
We'll see her do that throughout the story more consciously too. But when she frees herself from Amy's attack, then the relief she feels, even when she's still under duress of two of the three spiders, is just like, oh, I'm basically fully functional again, even though I'm still being hit with the feedback loop. It's pretty impressive, you know? Um,
Yeah.
it's Taylor. She's our girl. Um, let's see here. They didn't make any of the front pages because the bank lied about part of the money as partial reason, but for the most important paper, there was like a full page ad and an Amber Alert, so they didn't even make it to like either of the front two pages. So page three, baby. Um, and on page three, when they were talked about, the focus of the article was on the property damage and like the traffic problems caused by Gru's power, gridlocking downtown for a full hour. Um, and then like Taylor finds all this to be very comforting because she's just like, oh, thank God, they don't care that much that we robbed the bank. Not like I didn't do a bad thing. It's like, oh, no one cares. Woo!
And she goes as far, she's commenting about it in the chapter. She's like, yeah, I've been quietly elated by all of that.
Yeah,
Things are good.
yeah. She's good to go. If you want that, do you want that part, Kevin? I'm punching the ball.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, as we mentioned, like the story was pushed out of the way by an Amber Alert and an ad, so she's like pretty chill and ready to move on from that. Um, yeah, I think in this chapter, Taylor's just proud of herself for going to school. Like she talks about how like she knows herself and how easy it is for her to continue justify skipping school. She talks about it like a slippery slope. Like, yeah, if I skip today, then I'm just gonna want to go less in the future. I think we already talked about this a little bit. Um, she talks about specific issues like she needs to get her art project ready by Tuesday. She's like a little bummed that she's getting a 10% reduced grade because she hasn't been showing up and she's missing some other assignments, but she still is hopeful. She feels like it's salvageable, which is a really good mental attitude for it.
Yeah, yeah. No, she's got the right frame of mind, and it does feel in this moment like she'd be able to go back and kind of
Hmm.
pick the pieces up. Um, I think she really underestimates how much being a cape disrupts your life, though. Um,
Yeah.
because like I don't know. if she skipped one day of school for a bank robbery, like even if she only did that every couple weeks, it would still, the fact that she already missed a week straight and she's missing all these other things and she's been under duress for so long. So, but it's good that she at least thinks she can deal with it. She
Yeah.
she takes the
I
bus.
you
Oh, mm-hmm.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna move on to the next bit, but did you have more to say about that?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Taylor takes the bus east to get to the docks from Winslow High. Then, instead of heading to the neighborhoods to get to the loft, she follows the boardwalk north and keeps going on the beach. Then goes even further north through some fields and gets to the Lord Street Market. Oh my word, Victoria's here. Um, uh, I have called next college. or whoa, I have college next fall. You can tell how good I am at talking today. Um, one of the ward
Oh
members.
no.
Um, but I,
Mhm.
I sometimes when you're at Cape, just don't think about the future too much. Um,
Yeah.
I think we're ready to jump down here.
Yep. Um, yeah, she takes the bus out to the market. It's like a flea market where people are just renting out stalls. Some world building where they talk about how it's cheap to set up there. How both like no one would ever have a garage sale because you just set up a market here. It's where all the people are, and that there's just so much stuff there that it's just like you could shop there.
Yeah, yeah. She says that it has anything that you could find at a normal mall, which sounds like crazy to me. But then they mentioned that like even the high-end clothes, they have overstock from all the boardwalk shops that have to keep like new inventory and stuff available. Um, uh, and then Taylor meets with the other Undersiders at the entrance, and she notices all their outfits. And because Vic is here, assumedly for the rest of the show, question mark, then we will bring the fashion corner back. It's coming back. um I didn't mention it at the top and I accidentally mentioned it in the mid section, and now it wasn't an accident.
Amazing.
Vic, it's okay if you didn't prep anything, we'll just be mean. Yeah, you have the same thought as me. um cool.
Okay.
uh
All
Fashion
right, but
Corner, the returns. Yes, I am exactly Will Arnett right now. Um, but if you want to take it
okay.
away again.
Yeah, yeah. So Taylor gets to the market. She meets with the Undersiders. This cute little moment where Taylor's like, "Oh, did I keep you all waiting?" Alec predictably gives her the sarcastic response, like, "We've been waiting forever." And good guy Brian doesn't put up with this for 1 second. He's immediately just like, "Yeah, we've been here for like 5 minutes."
Yep, yep. Making her feel included instead of like shit. It's pretty cool. Um, and then we see here that the market is patrolled by the same uniformed enforcers that they have on the boardwalk, like a brutal private security that Brockton Bay has for the upper end like shops and things. Because even though this is kind of a low end flea market, on the back end, the boardwalk is still making money selling the overstock here, so that it's not as bad of an investment to buy so much in the first place, you know what I mean? So like it's just an extension of the sort of extra legal um, pro capital forces at work in the city.
I also think it's just really cool world building in that I don't know if the right phrase is it makes the city feel very real, but it's like very fleshed out and like all the little aspects of the city are like very well realized.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, and Taylor talks about how Rachel can't go with them into public. Brian says that Rachel's well known enough that it would cause problems to go places with her because if they were all together in a group, it would be really easy to figure out that they're the other undersiders. Um, and so they kind of can't expose themselves like that, which um, it kind of just furthers even within the undersiders this whole thing. Do you want to talk about this bit?
Yeah, I think it's easy to overlook sometimes, but like Rachel being a wanted criminal just kind of continues to cut her off just from like other people and really from getting to a better place in life. Like for various reasons, she always already is kind of excluded from society, but even with like the other villains that she's living with and working with, like her best chance at normal human interactions, she can't really interact with them in the public, and she's excluded because of that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then they kind of expand on that
Mhm.
with this next bit. Um with
Yeah, so
mhm.
like Lisa points out like right after this they bring up Rachel that there's a woman carrying a small dog in a ridiculous sweater, and she starts talking about how Rachel would have just like flipped her shit if she had been there to see that. Um, I think
Yeah.
Taylor says like, "Oh, it doesn't take much, does it?"
And
And
then yeah,
Brian's like,
Brian's like to set her off? No, it doesn't. Yeah.
mhm.
Um Brian sort of explains Brian and Lisa together explain to Taylor that she'll learn what Rachel responds to and like I mean, to me, it's pretty obvious what they say. I wrote, she cares about dogs, not people. Obvi.
Yeah, I feel like that's self-explanatory, but
Yeah.
maybe not to Taylor at this point.
She seems mystified by it, despite all evidence.
Like she's the dog person; she cares about dogs.
Yeah, it's pretty silly.
Yeah, but so Taylor having had the conversation with Armsmaster earlier, where he's like telling her like, "Oh, the Undersiders are murderers." She kind of thinks back to this conflict she has, where like, "Are these bad people?" So she takes the opportunity to ask if Rachel like has killed anyone. She like says right to Brian and Lisa, "Is like, has she killed anyone?" And Brian has one of my favorite responses to that question. Is like, "Oh yeah, she's wanted for serial murder. It's inconvenient."
I love that line too. Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Um, his I don't disagree with his attitude, but it's so funny when he says it that way. Just she's wanted for
Yeah.
serial murder. It's inconvenient.
Yeah, it's annoying sometimes, you know.
Oh,
But
Vic had said a while back, so much cute Alec Taylor stuff these chapters. Um, yeah. Oh man. Uh, oh yeah, and it's the opposite of how Lyra Balakwa would respond to this. She's like, I forget the exact wording, but I think it's, he's a murderer. He's reliable. Um, so yeah, different characters have different ideas about it.
Mhm.
Um, but I'll just jump in here. Lisa goes on to whisper explain the circumstances. Well, they just say she had a low voice, but I thought it was funny to say she
Mhm.
whisper explained.
Mhm.
Behind Rachel killing people when she first got her powers, not knowing what her powers did and using them on an untrained dog. This sort of reminds me, Vic had the idea that maybe Lisa had written Rachel's Parahumans Online article so that it would be less obvious that she had killed people to soften her image. Um, I wasn't sure, but I mean, it's as plausible as not, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
and then, oh yeah, they talk about how the dog that Rachel used her power on was an abused dog, so it went out of control on a rampage. Vic says Lisa always gaslighting. Um, yeah, you got any thoughts on the Rachel situation before we move on from it? because
Well, they were injured, but perhaps more than that too.
yes, injured to death. I, you know, th- th- in my mind, there's an implication when they say, when somebody says, they were injured, that they were injured and alive. Um, and it's like, technically correct is not always the best kind of correct.
Right.
Um, her foster family was injured. Thanks, Vic. Um, anyway, where were we? We were there. Yes, if you want to take it away.
Yeah. But I mean, so they're talking about this, but Lisa does tell everyone that Rachel hasn't killed anyone since the Undersiders formed. I mean, she does say like, yeah, Lisa doesn't know for sure what happened between the Foster family and when Rachel joined the Undersiders, but she's like pretty heavily implying that Rachel's better now, or at least isn't murdering people. Taylor, in response to that, is just like, "Oh, makes sense." I said distractedly. So that's one. Who was the other murderer in the group? And I think at this point, like Taylor's really not surprised at all that bitch is one of the people who's killed. So,
Yeah, I think right from the start she imagined it was her.
mhm.
I think a lot of people think it's not her because of how quickly Taylor thinks it's her. And then it's like, no, but it is. She's just right.
Yeah. I
Um,
kind of want to
mhm,
take this one because I
yeah,
absolutely love this moment.
for sure.
It's like kind of a bit of release of the tension of the discussion about bitch, but like right after they're having this conversation, Alec walks back to the group like wearing a Kid Win shirt, which is just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
Like especially after he dunked on him so hard.
exactly. Yeah, and that's our classic art here is that the Kid Win
Yep.
shirt. And then
Um,
there's the Tattletale line. You want to say it?
yeah, I like it. Ironic.
It's just I just like all the little character moments where they're just saying basic sentences, but somehow it feels like perfectly them.
Hmm.
Um, they're so well drawn within the book and then into my Brisbane. You know, that thing we think with the Brisbane. Um, so they meander around the outskirts of the market, so that they're not around that many people, and then they talk about their next moves. They're gonna drop off the money and the documents tonight. The boss will give them the payout later. Um, Greg says if only he'd managed to keep the hoverboard, he would go cruising around in Kidwin swag.
He really wanted it.
Yeah, I mean, oh my god, I want him to have it too. It would be so funny. It would make the rest of the book so funny. Um, I don't know. I think it would be delightful.
Yeah. Although Kidwin's not that great of a tinker at this point, so maybe not the best idea.
Yeah, I mean, it might explode. Who knows?
Minor details.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, so they're talking about like how the money's going to be dropped off, and Taylor, I think, like very understandably, is worried that their mysterious boss isn't going to follow through. Like they're basically just giving him money and expecting a payout later. So it's
yeah.
showing her cautiousness.
Yeah. Um, and then Brian explains why they do trust the boss and why it makes sense because they've been doing jobs for him for a long time. So at this point, he's invested a lot more than that, and so he even mentions I didn't put this in the doc here, but he mentions that if they were doing badly, he thinks that that kind of thing might be a risk, but that they've been. I don't think he directly states it, but they haven't failed a job. They've always
Hmm.
succeeded, um, which seems incredibly rare.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it makes sense.
yeah. I mean, it's basically impossible to win all the time in this setting.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing, one interesting thing following here is kind of part of this arrangement is they're just going to lay low for a while, partially to wait for the heat to die down, but also they need to just wait for their next job. And Taylor is just like having been a week on the job, is already concerned that like the longer she has to wait to pull a job, the longer she has to wait to collect info. So she's like kind of antsy in that sense, but she also does want a break because of how intense everything has been in a week.
Yeah, and as Vale pointed out in the audiobook lesson, I hadn't really thought about it this way, but like it is kind of obvious after it was pointed out to me that she wants to spend more time with the Undersiders, so like,
Mhm.
oh no, I'll have to wait. Sounds terrible. I do want a break though.
Yeah,
It's just pretty funny.
she is. Yep, she is like still. She is still very committed to this whole like double agent gathering info thing. Like she's already openly hoping at this point that she can learn more about their boss during the drop off.
Yeah, that's true. Um, and then at that point though, Lisa whisks Taylor away from the group to get some alone time. Come on, Tattletale grinned at me, grabbing my wrist. I'm stealing you. I like that when Lisa does this to Taylor, or Taylor thinks of her as Tattletale for like only that time in the chapter. This could have been a mistake, but I like to think that it was like intentional for Taylor to think of her as Tattletale when she had this demeanor, like um, getting all mischievous and like grabbing her by the wrist and stuff. Just because, these are pretty ridiculous, but she's not always Tattletale.
Yeah, in very tattletale fashion as well. Lisa presents an option for the guys to join them shopping, but like is intentionally making it unappealing to them so she can get some alone time with Taylor.
Yeah. Few complaints from the boys later, and they've decided to meet up at Fugly Bob's, a restaurant, a burger joint. Taylor finds herself getting caught up in Lisa's enthusiasm. Uh, Murderer, I had to remind myself. One of these three was a murderer.
Kind of like one thought I always have when Taylor goes back to some of her hard lines, like specifically she's like zero tolerance for murder, zero tolerance for using powers on her bullies. Like she draws some really hard lines on morality, but she does some like pretty awful things without too much thought. Like, we had talked about earlier jokingly, but she shoves a bunch of bugs down Clock Blocker's throat and is kind of just like cool with that. And I don't know.
In his
I think
eyeballs,
it's
too.
like, yeah, she's just like very okay with things that I think the average person would not be.
Yeah. They're just little bugs. It's fine. Um, yeah, it's pretty bonkers how she's just like she just does awful stuff, and I mean like later on she'll have arguably worse stuff that she does to people. I mean like just in a direct bug based sense. Uh, I'm even thinking of some stuff in the not too distant future that she does. That's just like, whoo boy, in self defense. Yeah, I mean that one's pretty far down the line in self defense, but I'm thinking of another
I think
one
it
where it's just like, checkmate, motherfucker. I wish she yelled that when she did her final move in that fight, actually. But,
hmm
oh my god.
yeah, it's always interesting like how when she's doing some of the more awful bug related things, like when the events are told from her perspective, it's always very different than like when other characters talk about it later. It's just like really, oh god, bugs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like they pointed out on the we've got Worm about Arc 3 in the bank fight that no one knew who like Taylor wasn't in the paperwork yet, so all the wards are there, and it's just like suddenly they're being attacked by swarms of bugs. So like Clock Blocker doesn't know what's happening. It's just the bugs attack. But Vic says, I don't know why she still thinks they're murderers when obviously Arm Man was exaggerating about one of them. I wouldn't call what Rachel did even close to murder. I guess she's right though. The second person is actual murderer. Um, Anyway, when we had talked about stuff, I had asked for your overall chapter thoughts, and I only ended up getting one of them down because you were spitting hot fire. You had like three or four takes that I didn't get down.
Yeah, I guess I'll start with one that you got down. Is just continually every time her character comes up, the there's such a good job done of making Emma like unlikable and just absolutely the worst. Like keeping things as spoiler free as possible. Like really awful shit happens to people throughout the series, and still even all of that. Like I think I hate Emma like probably close to the most. So.
Man, awesome.
And I think a lot of it is just like a lot of the early chapters are really focused on Taylor and her specific interactions with her. So there's like the more time is spent there. But man, she's just awful.
It's true. It's true. And the implied awfulness of like all the past interactions too.
Yeah.
Um,
But a
mhm.
lot of my other takes though is are just like I think something that Wildbow just does a really good job of in general. But this chapter and the next one that we'll talk about is he just I feel like he does a really good job of making all the Undersiders like not only likable, but they feel like very real people. I think we commented earlier, like some of the just really short bits of dialogue, just like they really realize the characters in a way that like you feel like they're there. So
Yeah, because I mean, real people talk in pretty clipped speech a lot of times in these like little, jumbles. And even though like the same person might say these kinds of things, they probably wouldn't say all the same kinds of things. But when you see these characters, I just feel like, oh yeah, of course they'd say that. Like if it's Alec or Lisa or Brian. Um,
yeah,
I think they're probably aside from Taylor. Well, there are a few other people that are really really well done. I was gonna say that they're probably the best ones, but then I was thinking of like kind of Defiant later on is like I think a really really
yeah,
like well written character. Um,
hmm
so anyway, Vic
yeah,
says, I think I was surprised when Emma talks her to her so frankly in this chapter. I assumed when I read it originally that there was more of a degree of separation between them or something. But she straight up is like, yeah, I remember being friends with you and I hated it. So that's why I'm mean to you now. Yeah, it's pretty direct.
like I understand that there are some people like this. I think I've just been lucky enough I don't have to deal with them, but like it is just hard for me to understand how someone can be that awful, like intentionally.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty bad. I think it's because it's like wrapped up in the core of her worldview, as we'll see in the far distant future.
Mm.
Um, got any other hot takes about this chapter 4.1 before we scoot along?
Just a short one because she's not really in the chapter, but in terms of like well done characters, I really like Bitch or like Rachel's character. I think
Mm-hmm.
like I think because of the perspective we get from Taylor and how they meet, like they start off getting in a fight. It they like show little bits of her over time. Like here was Lisa mentioning or alluding to like how she got her power and like her past before this.
Yeah,
Um,
she's the ultimate like the like quintessential example of the like enemy to person you root for in a Wild Bow story. I feel like
mhm.
because there's a lot of examples of it, but she's like so straightforward. The one of the most important characters throughout like this really core work, Worm. Um, so yeah, I feel a little silly for not listing her. I just thought of like things that she would or wouldn't say. Like in my mind, I was thinking like, she doesn't talk that much. Like she talks sometimes, but she prefers to not talk. So
She also frequently says that Lisa is an idiot, which I really appreciate.
yeah, true. I think that's more in Ward though. I think that she
Yeah,
she
sorry.
talks more in this about sort of whether you're a coward or not.
Hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that we're probably good to move on to 4.2.
Okay.
So this script was written by Vic, so anecdotes are from her perspective, but I will read them as though they were my own. Um, Lisa and Taylor head off. Lisa's starting to their girl talk by roasting Taylor's wardrobe. This reminded me of a time I was invited to the mall with a new friend. When I got there, she looked at my outfit and she said, "Yeah, this is why we needed to go shopping." Lisa's idea is that Taylor is dressing too much like herself. She expands into this in a really roundabout way and begins talking about Taylor's cautiousness. She frames this as a compliment and says that's what they needed in their group dynamic. Um, you wrote this? Yes, I wrote this anecdote. This happened to me. And it also happened to Kevin had he read that part. It's kind of
Yes,
incredible
clearly.
actually. It's creepy that we
Such a
all lived
shared
the same
experience.
life. Um, Bruh, my outfit wasn't even bad for real. Do
Yeah, I think.
you want to read this
I
or?
mean, yeah, the line from Tattletale when she's honestly roasting Taylor is you're observant, detail-oriented, and focused, more than any of the others. You watch, you interpret, and then you act with this careful, surgical precision. That's a strength and a flaw.
I'm negging you, but very calculatedly.
Yeah.
I know she's just real talking her, but it really, really feels like a neg somehow. Um, uh,
It,
mhm.
it kind of is. I guess I'll take this next section,
E.
but yeah, it's like um, Lisa's doing kind of a reverse compliment sandwich. I like that phrasing a lot, by the way. Like she leads by roasting her fashion, gives her a compliment in the middle, and then roasts her fashion again.
It's
Um,
great.
and like she actually takes it further than that, and I guess it's up for debate what her intentions are here. But like Lisa's talking about how Taylor's clothing choice is muted and covered up, like commenting on how she does it to stay out of sight. Um, she like starts relating it to how what Taylor is like as a person, saying she's too cautious and overthinking, and she's like verbally challenging her to be bolder and like open up, especially when circumstances force it. And she kind of like uses the criticism of her fashion as a segue into, again, like maybe up for debate depending on how you feel about Lisa, either criticizing Taylor's personality or like trying to help her, or both.
I think or both is. I certainly feel like it's both.
Yeah,
Um, I think she. I think she. Because I think she's right that like
yeah,
Taylor is like so long term beaten down that it's like causing her to um like overcorrect in these other ways and then like have these habits that have helped her cope through situations negatively affect her in other circumstances of her life that aren't really like directly related to that, like the way that she's because I think the reason that she dresses all like not to stand out is so that she's not bullied by additional people, like not
right.
noticed by them. So it's like all her hurt emotions. So yeah, I think that yeah, it's kind of two sided. Like I think that yes, Tattletale's manipulating her to the degree that she always manipulates her, um, but trying to help her to the degree that she
Mhm.
always tries to help her. Um, we've talked in past casts that like because of Tattletale's mindset, we don't really think that it's a spoiler to say that like from her perspective, keeping Taylor around and having Taylor be happy is like one of her top goals. Like
Mhm.
she wants to protect Taylor and wants her like to be nearby. That's all she wants. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much. Oh, Vale says fashion is surprisingly relevant through the whole story. She's a camouflage bug. Lisa wants the bright poison bitey bug to come out. Yeah. Do you want to take away the next paragraph, even though you read the last one? Kevin?
Uh, can you still hear me?
Oh, I can hear you again.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, so hello, hello. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. So Lisa wants to make Taylor actually buy clothes. She knows it's not going to happen unless she actually pressures her to do it. Uh, I, it's funny because I remember from the chapter she comments that she's noticed Taylor's just been switching off between the same two pairs of jeans for a week. And as someone who only owns two pairs of pants, I can relate to that. But yeah,
Yeah.
Taylor then protests immediately that her dad would question where she got them. And then Lisa just offers some easy solutions for her. She tells Taylor to say that they were given to her by Lisa. Taylor, again, this is very consistent, voices that she doesn't like lying to her dad. But she's bullied into the changing room anyways, as Lisa picks up some clothes for her.
Yeah. I envy you that. But if he hasn't figured out the reason your wardrobe has shrunk so much, chances are he's not going to notice if you have some new clothes. Um, so I think this is a good time to talk about the issue with Lisa's character. We know that this is untrue of Danny. He had certainly noticed his daughter's wardrobe changes along with all the other changes. This line doesn't feel accurate, but definitely feels loaded. Like maybe Lisa only said it to get a reaction from Taylor. Lisa, heavy interactions are difficult because, as we know, her power is always on. She really could always be using any interaction to gain information that she wants, or use information to move an interaction to a certain direction. It's sort of a, or it's sort of up to the reader to decide how manipulative any interaction with Lisa is. It just makes it really easy to twist her character into something nasty, in my opinion. This pulls into question what Lisa's intentions are in her relationship with Taylor. This might actually be a good time to read the audience participation questions. So, this will be the answers to the question, what do you think about Taylor and Lisa's dynamic at this point? And I'm going to see if there's anything on the channel, although I'm not sure. Nothing in the channel. If anyone in the chat has an answer to what do you think about Taylor and Lisa's dynamic to this point, then now would be a good time. But until then, we'll move on. And Kevin, just feel free to take us away.
Yeah. So I think the mention like the mention of her dad, or just like the line that Lisa gives Taylor jars her, because that's kind of the moment where Taylor realizes that Lisa knows that something's wrong with her life. Um, I mean, Lisa then says that she would have been able to tell that there was shit going on with in her life even without her power's help. Taylor's immediately defensive and like tries not to give anything away. She says right back to Lisa, "You're going to have to be a little more specific because I can confirm or deny anything. Before I can confirm or deny anything." So while this conversation is going on, Taylor is modeling the outfits that Lisa's picked out for her. Lisa rejects a dress, and it's not really clear if Taylor's annoyed that she didn't like the dress or is annoyed by the turn the conversation has taken.
Yes, yes, indeed. Um, and in case you're not looking at the screens, I have initiated the next chapter art speed draw um, of this scene happening. Um, Lisa lets Taylor in on her train of thought, explaining the obvious thought that Taylor was being abused by her dad was discounted when they heard Taylor talk about him. But the whole gang, sans bitch, agrees that it isn't her home life that sucks. It's got to be school. Taylor reacts dramatically to the fact that they've been talking about it together. She seems ashamed and disappointed. Taylor models another dress for us, and she says, um, "Ever think I didn't want you prying?" And then,
Yeah. So Lisa follows up by just telling Taylor that what she wants and what she needs are different things. And although Taylor argues like what she needs is to keep her cape life separate from her civilian life, which is something that she continues to try to do. Like I actually like based on what we've seen of what Taylor goes through, that I think that Lisa's right here. Like I think
yeah, she gains
Taylor
so much
desperate.
confidence in such a short amount of time. So,
Yeah, I like the comment we had earlier in the chat where like Taylor's really been in a friendship desert and just now having like someone offer it to her, like she just desperately needs it.
yeah,
But
yeah, definitely.
I guess I'll go on and read just another excerpt from the chapter.
Hmm.
And this is Lisa speaking first. And she says, "What you want and what you need are two different things. Cornflower blue is a keeper. Throw that one over the top." She pushed me back inside and shut the curtain. "What I need is to keep. I struggle to find a way of wording things that wouldn't raise red flags for any eavesdroppers. These two major parts of my life separate."
Boom. Um, yeah, I think this line is fun because it has a double meaning. With these two parts of my life separate, as in Taylor wants and needs, should stay separate, as well as the cape and non-cape, um, or cape and civilian, uh, badass and bullied child. Um, she needs to keep all that separate. So Lisa offers to help Taylor make the suckish parts less suckish, essentially saying that her or the team could help deal with the bullies. Taylor's blood goes cold as she imagines what that would actually be like, and then she sets a firm boundary with Lisa. Um, if she interferes with her problems, Taylor's out of the group. Lisa accepts this like poutily, but I think it's a pretty big like I don't know. Let me see if I can find that exact spot because I actually thought it was kind of an important moment. Gone. Yeah, it's having me try on clothes is fine. I told her, doing my level best to keep my voice calm. But you interfere directly in my problems, and I'm gone. Just like that. Just like that. I said, I'm sorry. So I thought that was a pretty good line. Oh, Vale's talking in the chat. I don't
Hmm.
think Taylor has a basic lack of confidence. I don't think that is a weakness of hers at all. I think she was put in a place where every single person was against her for years. Her weakness isn't confidence, it's asking for help with an unsolvable or with a problem unsolvable by herself. Her confidence blossoms instantly when she's around anyone who's on her side. Okay, yeah, I mean that's a I pretty much agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, if you want to take this big chunk,
I'll do my best. Um,
I can grab
I
it
don't.
um if you
Yeah.
would rather.
Uh,
So it's up to
I'll
you.
punt this one. I don't know clothes.
Okay. Back to the clothes. The skin tight jeans and low cut top are not Taylor's taste. Lisa encourages her to show some cleavage. Taylor concedes that she would if she could, dog. Uh, Honorary dead mom mentioned to talk about the genetic flat chested situation. Lisa gives her condolences when Taylor talks about her mom past tense. We kind of see here that Taylor has this fluctuating good bad relationship with her body. She came to terms with early. She came to terms with early with the idea that she would never grow bobbies, as Victoria said. I can see. I hadn't read ahead, but I can see why you had not wanted to read this. This is kind of funny that you wanted to skip over this, Kevin. This scene of her looking into the mirror mirrors the scene in chapter one, but we're not hearing anything close to the self hate that was established in the first chapter of the book. Although Taylor does quip that she has the body of a 13-year-old boy, she clearly isn't too hung up on it. that she jokes about a sketchy pedophile will think that she's the hottest fucking person they've ever seen. Yeah, she's got like Alec level jokes. Um,
She's legit like pretty funny and pretty witty here.
yeah, she just doesn't like say the shit she thinks of a lot of the time. Like when she says Sabrina the Teenage Nazi later, like chef's kiss. So good. Vic says, I wondered if I should skip the whole boob conversation. It's so dumb. Well, maybe. I almost wanted to like. I'm gonna expand on what you had said about the like girl talk at the end because when we had talked about it separately the other day, Vic, I thought what you had said about her like um the like different body issues between Lisa and Taylor. I thought that was like interesting enough to mention. Vale says, I have a document with all question mark. Her joke saved. I don't want to share on Discord because so many spoilers. If you could share that document directly to Vic or me, that would be cool. Um, but anyway, um, I don't know. I think that these are like realistic things for people to talk about. I guess. I feel like even boys talk about like body type and stuff and like feeling like weird and stuff. It seems realistic to me. I don't know. I don't know.
I think it's important too. Like, this is really the only person in Taylor's life that she could possibly have this conversation with.
Yes, that is also true. And like she needs a better self-confidence in like this aspect to try and like go after Brian and have any confidence in herself
Mm,
there, which like Lisa wants to happen because she wants her to be more insinuated in the group. So yeah. Anyway,
all right. What?
I think we're good to move on. Yeah.
All right. So the Gorals check out with $460 worth of collective fashion war crimes, which Lisa pays for. I love that phrase. But of Lisa's like thoroughly admitting that she's doing this to buy Taylor's silence, which yeah, may be part of it. But Lisa asked Taylor not to tell, like, for buying silence, what she means is Lisa's asking Taylor not to tell any of the rest of the gang that she fucked up not knowing that Amy or Panacea was one of the hostages. Taylor agrees to this. I think the line in the chapter is something along the lines of like Taylor wouldn't have done it anyways, and she thinks that Lisa knows that. But Lisa also tells Taylor to just say the word if she ever wants her to interfere in her personal stuff,
Mm-hmm.
specifically to do something about the bullying,
Mm-hmm.
which Taylor handles really well. Like she appreciates that Lisa's giving her the choice, and just I think that she really appreciates that she has the friend looking out for her.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Let's see here. Uh, so once they've head off to Fugly Bob's, there's some world building about like what Fugly Bob's is. It's not super important for this, but I think we will talk about it in the world building section, and we'll just like talk about the kind of texture it adds and stuff like that. I just wrote the note with no other notes, Fugly Bob's, on the world building. So yes, but it's fun. It adds depth, but it's not important for this like review section here. The gang orders food, and there's lots of sharing involved, which Vic thinks is sweet. I also think it's sweet. Um, Good contrast to Taylor's quiet meals with Danny and lonely meals in the school bathroom. For sure, for sure. Um,
Small,
mhm.
small good things for Taylor.
Yeah, yeah. She's just it's nothing but sticks in regular life and nothing but carrots as a cape. Um, yeah. Um, Brian starts to chastise Lisa about the amount that they bought, saying that that kind of thing is what the cops and capes are watching for. And Lisa assures him that this is normal in her spending patterns, so it should be no problem. And in the words of the script, Lisa, where are you keeping all this stuff? Brian seems to have similar questions, but decides not to comment. And then if you want to take away the quotes.
Yeah. Taylor follows that up with, "So, what comes next?" I asked. "Dinner, then dessert," Alec replied, his attention on the TV inside. I meant in terms of our, I lowered my voice, illicit activity. Just so dorky, but it's great.
She's a total
But yeah,
nerd.
but yeah, uh, lines of the script. Damn, Taylor, so eager to get back into things. She's really like can't wait to get back into the Cape stuff though, for real. And when Alec teases Taylor for wanting to do something less intense, she's just smiling and joking back. And it's just great to see like Taylor taking a joke and kind of building this rapport with the rest of the Undersiders.
For sure.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's a little quip after this where Taylor and Lisa have some quote unquote girl talk, which Alec takes offense to. But Taylor tries to change the subject and quote does an epic fail talking about where they got their powers from.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think we've said trigger events before. I think that it's safe
Okay.
to use that term. I don't think that I'm like this is a mid spoilers cast where I have a different philosophy on spoilers than many people. Um,
Hmm.
in that I think that like certain things are fine. I'm not gonna go super into like what a trigger event is or whatever right now, but we've vaguely talked about it in the past where people get their powers from and stuff. Um, but oh yeah, I wanted to expand on the little girl talk point of just yeah, I do think it's realistic for them to have little issues about what food does to them and Lisa's at least a little vain. She very much, whether she has a bad fashion sense to certain people or not, is interested in buying expensive clothing. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But I do want to add, I think like Taylor really has zero outlet for this kind of conversation because like Danny's as her dad and also just with his personality type,
Hmm.
really not like equipped to have any conversation remotely like this. So
Yeah, yeah. Oh, Greg says final room on the loft could have been extra closet space for Lisa before Taylor moved in, but now who knows where she keeps it all. One of those other buildings in the neighborhood by the loft is just like it was an empty warehouse and it's just stocked with like all of the most expensive clothing in dry cleaning bags. Um, but yes. Um, do you have any more? Oh, Vale said a sort of big comment. Spoilers. For me, the joy of discovery of first time with any media, movies, music, etc., is important to me. Sometimes I don't care, but usually I like to be completely unspoiled. Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. I think I can see going into this being completely unspoiled being better, but I feel like it's such a big endeavor to get somebody to read it. It's better to hook them in. And like I knew some stuff like a little bit about like the later parts of the book when I was in the earlier part that I had accidentally stumbled upon and it really intrigued me and pulled me along. Although Vic learned some fucking rancid toxic spoilers right at the start. Uh, and it had really colored her view of like expectations of where the story was going. Um, yeah, Vic knew some stuff. Um,
yeah,
oh boy. But
there are a few main points throughout the story that I think you gotta find out when it comes up.
oh yeah, for
Just leave it
sure,
there. So
for sure. I just certain setting details or like how let's take for example like the mindset of a mover. Not that we even
yeah,
know any movers yet, but unless you count Rachel's power, which she also
eh,
her lifestyle when she was living as a like unhoused person was the lifestyle of a mover, like moving all over a state, like never staying in one place. So it like even applies to her. Um,
mm,
but Vale says, I've asked a dozen friends, or dozens of friends to read Worm. Those who have, I tell nothing about anything and just follow along with them as they go, / we talk through the chapters. Yeah, yeah, I know. But, I just want to be able to talk about the book a little different. I'm sure there are lots of things with no spoilies at all. Um, Anyway, you had so many thoughts on the first chapter. Do you have any final thoughts on this chapter?
Yeah, and I think maybe we can talk about it more in the characters section,
Oh, sure.
but
Hmm.
I mean, no secret from me, Tattletale is one of my favorite characters throughout the story, and I think this chapter is really interesting just because I think she demonstrates a lot of care for other people on the Undersiders, but like powers are shitty, and I think that the nature of her power is that like no one can ever really accept help from her as help because you don't really know what her intention is. Like,
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
um,
Cool. Well, if you want, we can just move right into the character section, and we can do these guys in any order. So you could do Lisa first, if that's most convenient.
down to start with that. I guess I have missed some of the previous streams, so I don't know how much we've talked about Lisa before. But a lot of my read on her at this point is like I think that she demonstrates a lot of care and that she really looks out and tries to empathize with the people around her. Um, Particularly, like she shows that she has a soft spot for people in shitty situations. I think Taylor is the really obvious one. I think this chapter really shows that Lisa's determined to try to get her to improve her life situation. But maybe like a softer note, I think it's cool that like in these two chapters, Lisa shows a lot of empathy for Rachel. Like even just the brief mention of like why she was charged with serial murder and just like the brief comment like, oh, if she actually got a fair trial. I think she demonstrates a lot of care there.
I
But
agree. Mm-hmm.
some yeah. What I was saying before, like powers are shitty. Like I think that I think you had talked about this before, like her power's always on. And I think a level more than that, like for her to be effective as Tattletale, she has to give off the impression that she's this manipulative mastermind. And I think that just like gets in the way of her actually trying to show care to people.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of it's a barrier between her. Like a lot of powers get you out of the immediate situation in which you got the powers, but they also like cause you to permanently have other problems. Yeah.
Yeah. I won't get into too much of it because I cannot remember how much of it is discussed, but I think that the way the PRT treats her with classifications and like being cautious, not knowing exactly what her power does, is another aspect of this. Like, I think it's just when there's so much uncertainty with what she knows and what she can do, like you do have to assume the worst a lot of the time. I think that's very sad for her.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. Let's see here. Was there anything? I think you covered everything here, but it does help her reputation as a cape despite hurting her personal life. I think is
Yeah,
something I wanted to double up saying because I think that's such an important thing. Is like a lot of the aspects for different characters, such as like Taylor herself, um, make them really strong capes because they have these things that are problems in their normal life.
yeah.
Um, Taylor's like coldness when she gets into a fight like would not be a good trait in like a real situation.
Yeah.
Because it's like a lot of people see her like even just move around the room and they're like, ooh, it's just she creeps people out.
But on a
Um,
more meta note,
mhm.
I want to just say that like this series completely changed my perspectives on like powers, just in the sense that like a lot of what got me into the series was just how cool and well thought all the powers were. And when I first started reading and like they first kind of explained what Lisa can do, I'm like, oh wow, thinker powers are dumb. Like, why would you not just want like some super powerful physical ability? And
Kevin,
like just the more,
Kevin, that is so
yeah.
bonkers coming from fucking you, who has like basically a real life thinker power. They- Come on. Oh my god.
But yeah, just like Lisa in the bank fight, like just how she's able to shut down Glory Girl and Panacea, just like with like the vague threats is so cool.
Yeah, for sure. It's just I never thought someone like you would discount thinker powers. Jeez, that's funny. Oh my god. Oh, Kevin. I'm gonna jump back over to the chat. This was a while back as part of the um spoilies, non-spoilies. It's just Vel's personal opinion was the uh liking to send people into works completely unexplained, which oftentimes I do too, depending on the work, and thinking that the discovery is a big aspect, and understanding that not everyone's as interested in the discovery part of reading, because Greg had just sort of had the same feeling that I had about not minding dropping a few spoilers for a long story like Worm. So yeah, there are definitely a couple styles. If someone has RL real life thinking powers, why would they even want more of them? Makes sense. Okay, okay, fair. You'd want a physical power to complement your thinker power. This makes sense to me. Um, I just know that if I need to do a math equation and I have like Kevin and 10 other random people on hand, Kevin will be the person I go to. Um,
I don't think my math power is quite as powerful as some of the ones that are introduced later.
well, sure, sure. It's not that powerful, but like, it sure seemed pretty powerful to me to win like state level competitions and stuff. So, I don't know. I was always impressed with your math, Kevin. And you taught me how to do math, actually. So, um,
Oh,
that's
thank you.
something. But let's see. Oh, Vale says if I got to choose, I'd have a stranger powers because I'm currently a stranger -1 just because I'm reclusive. Or oh, stranger one because I'm reclusive. Um, yeah, I mean you just you gotta increase your powers like ultra specialized. That's what I've learned in this world. If your power is good enough, they just can't beat
Yeah.
you. Uh, I kid, I kid. Any ultra specializing has benefits, but it can also clearly fail. Moving on to from Lisa to our least helpful character, Emma. Um, Taylor is clearly way better at dealing with her now. Emma, still the worst. Openly sort of shows her hand in front of everybody as like a real asshole. Um, like it's weird because you see the changed power dynamics in a much later scene of like Emma being around like people that didn't go to their same high school all the time, and they're not just instantly on her side, and so the scene, I don't know, it seems a little bonkers that people would go along with her. It's like Kevin, you had said earlier that you would be like cheering for Taylor's comebacks that she had
Yeah.
on Emma, and I mostly agree. But it seems like Emma really has the school in particular under her thumb.
Mhm.
So yeah,
I think a big part of that too is we see this from Taylor's perspective. I think it's easy to miss this stuff in real life.
yeah, yeah. Like just not hear the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um. Yeah, I don't have too much to say on Emma. I think that she at the beginning of that chapter just lets us see how far we've come. Oh, and lets us see the one time per arc that Taylor goes to school. Uh, um, Yeah, and then moving on, we'll just do. I guess they're both pretty short interactions because Lisa was most of the stuff, but we'll do Brian first. Do you want to talk about
Mm.
him or Alec?
I'll talk about Brian. I think He and so he doesn't do show up a lot in these chapters, but I think it's like very in character for him to just like not put up with any trolling. Like we mentioned earlier, he really just does want to make Taylor feel welcome. And he is generally it's weird to say noble because he is definitely a villain, but like he has like some very good qualities to him for sure. Also just like with Lisa describing him as pragmatic, I think it's funny that he's like the first person to call Lisa out for buying so many things.
I think he's got a very like small circle mindset, but within that he is noble. Like I don't think he
Mm,
would do anything very evil. First of all, like I think he has definite limits, but also I think for the Undersiders and then his actual like sister that um he would like put a lot of sacrifice out despite the fact that like he isn't interested in like being a hero and saving people.
yeah.
Oh yeah, Vale says Brian is very steady, stable, consistent, reliable. I agree. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's one of the things that Taylor needs in her life right now, I think. So, then I'll. Do you have any more thoughts about Brian?
Not at this point.
Okay. Oh, of everyone in the story we've met, if Brian said something, I'd believe it more than anyone else. Hmm. All right. Um, and yet in a couple chapters he tells us a lie. Um, Alec, comedic genius. That's the only note here. He has good timing. He does not spend too many words to tell a joke. He I mean when he is trying to roast Taylor at the gate, he literally only says one word. He just says forever. Um, yeah. Oh, Vale.
think I mean he's like potentially hard to connect with, so
um, yeah, I think he is intentionally hard to connect with, and he intentionally keeps himself as a background character as well.
mm,
So we only see him so much, although he is much more social than like start of story Rachel. Um,
yeah.
yeah, he's not completely disconnected. He needs peers, but
But like at this point we don't know very much about him, right? So
that's right. Yeah.
mm,
Um, yeah, yeah. Almost nothing has been said about him. I think we'll scoot along home to the powers and knowledge and world building section where we have not learned a lot about the powers other than Rachel's origin story being expanded upon slightly. But Fugly Bobs, do you want to sort of explain the kind of burger joint it is, or do you want me to?
yeah, I mean, have you all been to Big Judd's?
Definitely yes for me.
'Cause that's always what I imagine when I
Same,
think of the
literally
scene.
same is Big Jets.
Like down to the challenge. But I mean, there's always I feel like in most cities, there's always this place that's just like give me the most unhealthy, like biggest serving of fried meat and things that you possibly can, and
Mm-hmm.
it will just take me out for the rest of the day. But, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a classic. They describe
Mm,
the food as being so greasy that if you take the paper bag home, then it'll be completely see through by the time you get it there. Um,
yeah.
I imagine it being uh like twice as greasy as like smash burger, which also
Mm,
like greases through the paper. Like when I get smash burger with people who aren't used to it, I'm like, don't set that on your lap. It's not greasy now, but it will be by the time we get anywhere. So like yeah. Um and Greg's right. Everybody from this area thinks of Big Jed's, I think. Um
yeah.
it's a classic. And that's the thing is it's like when you're in your town, you know the like staples. And this is like a staple. Um so that's kind of fun.
It's like the kind of place I would expect everyone who like is from Brockton Bay, has been to a few times. So
Yeah, for sure. Audience participation for anyone who hasn't read the book. Oh no, none of those people are here. How do you think Taylor got her powers? Tell us in the
uh,
YouTube comments, new readers who haven't read before. Um, that's M, Quinn, uh, Jordan, several people. Let's see here. And then the new question here. Kevin wrote this question, so I think that it's only right that Kevin read the question.
yeah. So something that so the question is, what do you think about Taylor's refusal to use her powers on her bullies, especially now that she's fought the wards with them now?
Yeah, yeah. It's a whole
It's,
thing.
it's something that think it bothered me a lot the first time I was reading through the beginning, and then the more I understood about Taylor, the more it started making sense to me. I think there's a lot of dissonance between shoving bugs into people's holes and then oh no, I can't hurt the people who are making my life hell.
Yeah, it's like she's got these same weird barriers in her mind too that someone like Amy has. Like Amy is more specific about it. It has to be like her rules for herself that she keeps, and she's like, I can't break my rules. Um. Vic says she needs rules to help her with her boundaries and self control. It was probably a good call on her side. Um, yeah, I don't think that she would be not doing this to Clock Blocker. I think it would be more like she would be doing more bad things. So this is at least
Yeah,
something. That's
he holds on to it.
the unfortunate side of things. But yeah. So we'll talk about that question next week about the Taylor's refusal to use her powers. Vic says interesting. She knows that about herself, but can't see it when she's actually being bad. Yeep. But the fashion corner has become this time. It is the returns. Vale, Vic, me, anyone else who's lurking in the chat who may want to talk about fashion. I'm getting out my notepad now. Vic says already in the past that they haven't prepared anything because they didn't think they were going to be here. But I'll just bring up, we get in the beginning of 4.1 this fancy expensive gift dress that Emma has. It's not even really described other than that it looks expensive. So we have no idea what it's like. Impossible to tell. Taylor, classic line here. What's wrong with my wardrobe? I asked a bit defensively. Lisa was dressed up in a dusky rose dress with gray tights, her hair in a bun with loose strands framing her face. Emma's outfit sounded bad. But it's not even described. That's what I'm saying, Vic. It just says she's wearing an expensive dress. I don't know. The fashion corner has become a bust. Oh, with the messy bun. It said like fancy knot. I kind of thought about it like the 10 things I hate about you haircut. That 10 things. Let me see if I can. Can't find it instantly. Not gonna look anymore. Um, expensive is the keyword. Question mark. Um, and gross combo. Tattletale dress, kind of like a 2010 hipster in this chapter. So a 2010 hipster is gonna be wearing a dusky rose dress with gray tights. Wide range and it's all bad. Oh my god. Wrecked.
Wow.
Let's see here. What was Alec wearing? A long sleeve shirt and a slim fit black denim jeans that really showed how lanky he was. Oh my word. He must have gotten hero pants at that stall too. um,
He's very like teenage.
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, and he had the Kid Win shirt. Vic says, "Shh." Vale says, "Emma's a literal fashion model. How can you say bad things? Sheesh." Sigma. So Greg says, "You just assume that I won't care about fashion just because it's true." Um, Vic says, "I didn't want to use black in the image." Fair enough. Fair enough. Wanted a different color palette for this arc. I'm guessing. That wasn't as heavy on that. Um, Brian was wearing. Brian was looking sharp. Of course he was, Taylor. Um, Brian was looking sharp in a dark gray sweater and faded jeans. Um, and he was messing around with sunglasses in front of that sunglass hut. Um, yeah, Vic points it out too. Um, and then I didn't even get to the part in 4.2 where they're going through all the clothes. I'm going to vamp for a second to give Vic time to find what happens in 4.2. Um, what does this have to do with my clothes? What does the fashion corner have to do with your clothes, Taylor? What are you even asking? Um, let's see here. Well, yeah, they talk about like the change in wardrobe that Lisa wants to see, going from the muted colors to more colorful colors, showing off skin. Um, Vic says that she makes Taylor buy low-rise jeans. Demon. Yeah, I mean, I definitely a demon. If I've ever heard of what they do, low-rise jeans. Um, but oh, Vale says fashion's purpose in Worm is to set context, either about state of the character or Taylor's opinion of them. It's not critical to remember, but it leaves an impression. It's really well done. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the characters I think of, even their like cape costumes, I kind of, when I'm not thinking about it really specifically, they're like kind of a nebulous cloud of how I feel about the character that's not a specific visual. Um, so I don't always know what a character looks like in a scene, but some of the outfits are really stark, and I do remember.
I think though too the fashion's important in the sense that each cape puts a lot of effort into their costume. Like I think it shows about a lot about how they want to be presented. I don't know how much of it's come up yet with Taylor and her costume evolving costume design, but
Yeah. Um, I think a lot goes into it, and like some of them like have the creative skills to pull stuff off. Some don't. Some have design teams behind them. But like no matter where the costume's coming from, like a design team tells you something about that character anyway, because it tells you like either they're from a corporate team or they're from one of the government hero teams.
Mhm.
If they can fabricate their own costume, like a cord, like his mask is supposed to look super intricate and stuff, and so it kind of I I'm guessing it gives him some gravitas to have like such a nice looking costume, but then he also has like the weirdness that he's just wearing like a regular suit. I'm like trying to think
Mm.
of like all the different things like yeah, no matter who it is, their weird costume, their fashion sense, if they're bad at it, like all of that always tells you something, and it's like really cool. Um, oh, Vic says, yeah, I agree, Vale. I actually really like Taylor's style when she grows into it. Vale says, same. It also shows growth in some cases. Like this scene, even, it's about growth. Vic says, I always imagine her in that blue sundress she wears later on. Vale says, instead of Wildbow writing, and then Taylor felt much happier and more open with her friends. It was so nice for her. You get a clothing purchase montage that leaves that impression. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Spending quality time with the characters, I think, is really important. Like, a lot of stories don't. leave enough time to breathe. I even feel like some parts of this story could use a little more time to breathe, which sounds silly because of how long it is, but like characters having downtime really lets you experience what that time period was like for them, etc. So,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. Oh my god, I got there from the fashion. I've really fallen off the topic. But I think that's probably good enough, unless people have other stuff. Yes, longer worm, good idea. Not even joking. See, Vale, I'm not either. We're on the same page here. Um, clean up some of the early chapters. Make that Ward's interlude longer and from Gallant's perspective. It'll be sick. But that is all for now. For the fashion corner, and so we're gonna sort of round things out. Do you have any other thoughts that you want to talk about before I read about these links and start closing things down?
Nothing specific. I guess I sounds like don't need to convince anyone in the audience, but this story is incredible and worth going through at least once. So,
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Well, I will talk to you later about being on future episodes. I'm definitely interested in having you co-host again. I'm gonna talk to Greg about it sometime soon as well. I've got the schedule document, and I can share people into it to make sure that we can coordinate well. Um, but yeah, so I'm gonna start playing that outro music. Which window? This one. Um,
thank you for having me and thanks for doing this.
yeah, for sure. It's been pretty great having you here. I we don't get to talk that often, so it's been really nice. The music we've got for this episode and for this arc is "Mist Over Pendle" by CO.AG Music again. They've got some great background weird music. Um, the author of the work being discussed is, of course, Wildbow, who can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online because this is all free media. Um, parahumans.wordpress.com. And there's also a fan made audiobook of the entire work that's available at audioworm.rain-online.org. And as well as like Spotify, YouTube, plenty of places. And our Discord server link is in the description of the video and the YouTube channel. Bye to everyone in the chat. Vic says, nice to meet you, Kevin. Phil says, very nice episode. Thank you all. And beautiful art as always. All right, well, bye everybody. I'm ending the stream.